The next item on the agenda is questions to the Secretary General of our institution, Mr. Alain Berset. We will first hear questions from the speakers on behalf of the political groups and then hear a response from Mr. Berset to those questions. I just remind you that there's a limit of 30 seconds. Of course, I can be a bit flexible, but I want to remind you that we ask a single question and not make speeches. I would like to ask our Secretary General, Mr. Alain Berset, to take his place at the rostrum. Dear Alain. You have the floor.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président de l'Assemblée parlementaire du Conseil de l'Europe, Mesdames et Messieurs les membres de l'Assemblée parlementaire. Je souhaiterais, au tout début de ce moment de questions et réponses, tout d'abord saisir cette occasion pour adresser mes plus sincères condoléances à la délégation suisse ainsi qu'aux proches de Alfred Herr, votre collègue Freddy Herr, dont le décès soudain nous attriste profondément. Et je le fais aussi parce que pour moi, il était un collègue de longue date, un collègue qui a marqué de son empreinte la vie politique suisse et européenne. Son engagement indéfectible au sein du Conseil de l'Europe, vous le connaissez, notamment en tant que chef de délégation, ainsi que son énergie, sa détermination ont apporté une contribution précieuse à nos travaux communs et son absence laissera un vide tant sur le plan institutionnel que sur le plan humain.
Thank you, dear Alain. Now I will give the floor, as I said, to the speakers on behalf of political groups, and first is Liz Christoffersen from the Socialists, Greens and Democrats. Liz, you have the floor.
Mr. Secretary General, the level of suppression in Azerbaijan is unprecedented. More than 300 political prisoners, among them journalists and human rights activists. 76 colleagues in this assembly are declared persona non grata. The authorities neither cooperate in monitoring procedures nor in election observations. They do not implement judgments from the ECHR. My question is, are any efforts made by the Secretary General to bring this unacceptable behavior to an end and to make Azerbaijan fulfill their obligations as a member of the Council of Europe? Thank you.
I remind all colleagues that the procedure goes as follows. When we have questions on behalf of the political groups, the Secretary General will answer immediately, and then I will take questions in group of three. So, dear Alain, you have the floor to respond to the first question.
Dear President, thank you very much for this question. We are all fully aware about the situation in Azerbaijan. We know that we have a lot of concerns in Azerbaijan, and it is since a long time in this situation. We know this despite the fact that we have really diverse family with a lot of different contexts and different histories and different situations. It is important always to work together to find the highest level of convergence between our member states and for the values. I see your concern, I share your concern, and I think the best way to make some progress is not just to observe from far and to denounce, it is to engage, to work together, to try to develop projects, to highlight the points where we have some problems, to try to make some steps, positive steps. I know that it is difficult, but even if it is difficult, because it is difficult, it is much more important to engage. It is what the Council of Europe is doing. As you may know, we have a cooperation with Azerbaijan at the intergovernmental level. We had recently a visit of the Committee for the Prevention of Torture. We have an action plan on Azerbaijan until 26. We have an office in Baku working on this. On different topics like against violence against women and girls, for anti-corruption, anti-money laundering, and other topics. I mean, it's the best way to engage, knowing that we have with Azerbaijan one of the 46 member states of the organization.
Thank you. On behalf of the European People's Party, Elisaveta Iasko.
Dear Secretary General, thanks for everything that you do to support compensation mechanism and register of damage. But my question is about the frozen assets. Could you please provide us more information on what happens within the Council of Europe on this question? And what do you think about the idea of the Chancellor Merz, who recently said that the frozen assets can be used for defense spending? How can we make sure that these assets are used also for compensation and for reconstruction of Ukraine? Thank you.
Dear Alain, you have the floor.
Thank you very much for this question. It allows me maybe to start giving some few recent elements about the Claims Commission and the compensation mechanism. I mean, we have these three pillars for accountability: European Court of Human Rights, Register of Damage, very soon implemented in the Claims Commission. We hope that it will be done by the end of this year, and then the Special Tribunal. About the Claims Commission, the compensation, it is clear, and it was always clear, that the whole discussion must also include the discussion about the funding, how to fund all those work. And it is clear that since many years now, the whole discussion about the so-called frozen assets is at the very center of this discussion. I noted in recent months that there is first of all, among our member states, differences about the legal ways, the legal issues that it represents, and how to make possible to use the assets or the benefits. I mean, what can be done with the asset, with how to say this? The interest, sorry. And to see what we can do with this. I mean, we need, first of all, to solve this. It is not primarily the role of the Council of Europe. Obviously, there are some legal issues in the different countries, but it must be clear that we need funding to make sure that the Claims Commission and then restoration, reparation, and reconstruction can be financed. About the use of the frozen assets to finance defense systems and weapons, I mean, it's not my role to take a position on this. I just note, and I think it is also understandable why, I just note that, a lot of European countries are investing a lot of money now for defense system and weapons. I mean, it is probably absolutely a good thing, and to understand in the actual situation, also for supporting Ukraine. But I think our role is to recall that if we are investing a lot in this matter, it will never be solid and sustainable if the whole thing is not built on a solid ground of democratic security. That's why our role is also to call for this, for stability on the long term, and not to forget to finance and to support the democratic security. That means the values, that means the importance of the rule of law, the importance of democracy, because it is exactly what made in the past, in the last 8 years, that our countries have always tried to be as stable as possible. Despite of this, we know this, we have wars, war on the European continent. We have the aggression, to take this particular, the very central case, the aggression of Russia and Ukraine since 2014 and full-scale invasion since 2022. Despite of this, we must invest to continue to work for stability and for the conditions that must allow peace to always prevail.
Thank you. On behalf of the European Conservative Patriots and Affiliates, Armen Gevorkian.
Secretary General, I trust that you support genuine peace rather than paper peace built on illusions. You would agree that it is difficult to call it peace when Armenian prisoners remain in Baku jails, Azerbaijani forces occupy parts of Armenian sovereign territory, and the Armenians of Karabakh are denied the right to return to their homeland. How can the Council of Europe, under your leadership, contribute to resolve these issues and to ending Azerbaijan's violations of fundamental human rights and international law?
Dear Secretary General, you have the floor.
Thank you. I thank you very much for this question. First of all, we have seen in the South Caucasus a lot of instability, war, And it was not, good conditions also for the population, and it was really a difficult situation for all the population in the country, in Armenia. I just wanted to mention this. In that sense, I must tell you that the whole discussion that I had recently with different actors in the region shows that this very important step made at the beginning of August in Washington with the draft peace agreement, it is a step for stability and for peace in the region. But clearly, as you mentioned, I mean, it is not black or white, 1 or 0. Peace is always a process. It needs some time, it needs some improvement, it needs some collaboration, it needs to work together and to try to restore also where it is possible a certain trust to have these conditions happening. You mentioned also the people detained in Azerbaijan. I think it is clearly a discussion that we should continue to pursue in this context. But once again, and without to go into too many details now, once again, the only way to make some progress is never to cut ties. It is to be in contact, and to be in contact to have this development of a certain trust and level of collaboration. It is to be in contact, not speaking just about the fact that we are in contact, but it is to have enough regularity and clarity.
Dear Secretary General, sorry to interrupt. Dear colleagues, I hear voices, and I believe I'm not in an age that I can hear voices from the outer space. So the voices come from this hemicycle. Please let us be quiet and listen to the Secretary General. We are asking questions to him, and he's answering. Thank you. Dear Alain.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. You know, sometimes I hear also voices, but more at night. No, I was not hearing the voices, but thank you for your intervention, helping me to continue to answer the question. Just to stop, I mean, we need to have contacts, not speaking about the fact that we are in contact, but on the substance. And it's exactly what I try to do, being clearly in contact regularly with Armenia. Prime Minister Pashinyan, we had yesterday, by the way, a very good meeting, evening also together. And I had also the possibility to meet President Aliyev last week in New York, exactly for this reason, you know, to speak about those elements. And this would create conditions, this could create conditions where we can address then other issues or the next issues that you mentioned in your question.
Thank you. On behalf of ALDE, it is Sabina Kudic. Sabina, according to my computer, you haven't inserted your badge. You have to insert your badge first.
I did.
You did, okay. You can take the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, dear Secretary General. We primarily welcome your efforts to ensure that the mechanisms of the Council of Europe, such as the European Court of Human Rights and Venice Commission, are available to all the citizens of our member states, including those states such as Azerbaijan, who are absolutely failing to meet our standards. On behalf of ALDE, I might kindly suggest that you also consider forming a task force together with the rapporteurs in finding ways and the path for our colleagues back, but in a way that would ensure that it meets the human rights criteria and the paradigm that we all share in this chamber. In addition, finally, I will ask, do you think that citizens of countries who are eager to meet the standards and who are desperately seeking to become members of this institution, such as Kosovo, equally deserve access to the Council of Europe's mechanisms and institutions the same way that we wish to see our colleagues from Azerbaijan and Georgia back? Thank you.
Thank you. Dear Secretary General, you have the floor.
Well, I thank you for your, it was more a proposal than a question, if I may see this so, to a constructive proposal to see what can we do to make sure that we are overcoming, I mean, just a discussion about the fact that we are or not working together, but how to go more in the substance and to find ways. I take your proposal with great interest. We will, well, have a look into this and to think which is the best way to progress. But one more time, I think the Parliamentary Assembly of the Council of Europe plays a central role in the whole discussion, and we have also with the Committee of Ministers the two constitutory and then statutory bodies of the organization working together to make sure that we have, because it's the only thing that matters in the end, that we have the maximal possible leverage for what we do. That means for the values, for implementing, executing, or making sure that there is a good execution of the decisions of the court, for making sure that democracy is progressing and not backsliding, to make sure that there is a good protection in all possible different situations and contexts for human rights. And saying this, I know that it is saying a lot about the situation, and there is at the moment a huge gap between what we would achieve if we would live in a perfect world and what we are really achieving. Because as I, several times mentioned before, I mean, we are not more right now in a world where we are converging by the values for the best, for the better. We are in a world where we have divergent forces in action that are quite strong at the moment, and it is playing a strong role, sometimes a very negative role, on the values that we defend and that we support here together. That's the first point. Your question has two questions, if I can say it so. You mentioned also the Western Balkan and the question of accession of Kosovo. I mean, for the Western Balkan, I can just tell you in general, it was not the question, but I take this opportunity to see that I'm following really closely the situation. And it is really important, particularly in certain cases, certain countries, to recall that, the rule of law, that sovereignty, territorial integrity, stability of the region, and the rule of law are central. It seems evident, it seems obvious, but it is not in any cases, and I want to recall this. By the last question, accession of Kosovo, it's clear that when we have member states, it is first of all for the advantage of the population, because those populations are covered by the European Convention on Human Rights. And to have this possibility opens the way when there is a violation or possible violation of human rights to go to the court and to have a decision. For the concrete case of Kosovo and accession, as you may know, it is a decision now that is pending before the Committee of Ministers, and I'm not able to give you much more information at this stage of the discussion.
Thank you. On behalf of the United European Left, Emmanuel Fernandez.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Composé de citoyens de 45 pays, dont une majorité d'Européens, la Global Sumud Flotilla fait cap sur Gaza afin de rompre le blocus illégal imposé par Israël et apporter une aide humanitaire. Répondant à un devoir moral et légal, puisque les États font fi de la Convention pour la prévention et la répression du crime de génocide, la flottille s'est trouvée sous le feu de multiples drones. Le Haut-Commissariat de l'ONU aux droits de l'homme a demandé que cessent ces attaques et réclame une enquête indépendante. Le gouvernement israélien promet une interception et des arrestations, là encore totalement illégales, puisqu'en eau internationale. Une autre flottille, la Thousand Madeleines, s'est également lancée. Alors, Monsieur le Secrétaire général, soutenez-vous ces flottilles, comme le font officiellement maintenant l'Italie et l'Espagne, et condamnez-vous le génocide des Palestiniens par Israël? Je vous remercie.
Thank you. Dear Secretary General, you have the floor.
Je vous remercie pour cette question. Vous imaginez bien, je rentre de New York, de l'Assemblée générale des Nations unies, vous imaginez bien que c'était évidemment au cœur de quasiment toutes les discussions que nous avons pu avoir là-bas. Ce que je peux dire encore à ce sujet, comme je l'ai fait lors de notre dernière session ici, c'est que ce que nous constatons, ce que nous voyons à Gaza est une profonde tragédie humaine. C'est quelque chose qui est inacceptable, qui ne devrait pas exister en regard du respect que nous devons avoir pour les droits humains. En disant cela, nous rappelons évidemment que la position du Conseil de l'Europe à ce sujet, eh bien, c'est de défendre les droits humains, c'est de dénoncer les violations de droits humains et la situation catastrophique à Gaza, c'est d'appeler à un cessez-le-feu immédiat, à un accès immédiat de l'aide humanitaire pour les personnes concernées. Il faut aussi bien sûr considérer la libération de tous les otages. Et ce dont nous avons besoin aujourd'hui, c'est surtout, et c'est ça qui aujourd'hui fait défaut, d'un processus politique crédible qui puisse se diriger vers la seule solution qui permette d'avancer pour la stabilité dans la région, qui est la solution à deux États. tous les éléments constructifs qui viennent ensuite s'ajouter à cela pour attirer l'attention sur cette situation, pour que les choses bougent et pour avoir un impact sur la situation sont excellentes. Et c'est dans ce sens que, naturellement, je crois que vous avez rappelé le rôle et l'intervention du haut commissaire aux droits de l'homme. Il est évidemment dans son rôle et dans sa fonction en faisant cela. Et nous rappelons qu'il n'y a pas de double standard, que les droits humains sur le territoire européen ou les droits humains en dehors du territoire du Conseil de l'Europe sont les mêmes. Ils sont universels et c'est la raison pour laquelle nous avons cette position, je crois, d'une grande clarté. Il faut faire très attention aussi à ne pas promettre des choses qu'on ne peut pas délivrer. Et ça, c'est le point, naturellement, sur lequel nous n'avons pas d'accès pour les personnes qui sont à Gaza à la Cour européenne des droits de l'homme. Ils ne sont pas couverts par la Convention européenne des droits de l'homme. Ça n'enlève rien à la position politique qui doit prévaloir, en souhaitant encore une fois que nous ayons, aussi rapidement que ce soit possible, un cessez-le-feu, les éléments que j'ai mentionnés tout à l'heure, mais surtout un processus politique crédible pour la stabilité dans la région, parce que c'est le seul moyen, dans le fond, d'offrir des perspectives aux populations qui, aujourd'hui, sont dans une situation qui est en fait complètement inacceptable, qu'on ne devrait pas devoir observer au XXIe siècle.
Thank you. And this concludes the list of the speakers on behalf of political groups. I will now open the list of the colleagues who have asked for the floor in group of 3, and I will start with Kokse Göksen.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. In Turkey, dozens of mayors, politicians, bureaucrats, and activists have been jailed. In the lawsuits filed against the CHP, there are demands for the appointment of a trustee to the party. A trustee was appointed to the Istanbul administration of the CHP. Although these lawsuits have become irrelevant due to the congresses held by the party, the judiciary continues to be used as a political tool. These are not just violations of rights, they raise questions about the legitimacy of the democratic system itself. What are your thoughts on this matter? Thank you.
Thank you. The next question is from Jainalka Juhadz.
Mr. Secretary General, 1 year after taking office, how do you assess the functioning of the organization from within? What have been the main challenges during your first year in office? And in which area of the Council of Europe activities do you still advocate for greater change, also ahead of the planned next summit? Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. And the third in this first group is Saskia Kluit.
Thank you, President. We've seen this summer and these months that our citizens suffer under the climate change crisis. We have fires in Southern Europe, crops dying in Eastern Europe due to rains. We have a big PFAS crisis that threatens the lives and health of our citizens. Tomorrow we have a wonderful event on the right to a clean and healthy environment. And my question to you is, what is the Council and what are you doing to make the next steps for the development of the right to a clean and healthy environment that will protect our citizens and their way of life? Thank you.
Thank you, Saskia. Dear Secretary General, you have the floor to respond.
So, thank you. Thank you very much. I will start with the first question about the recent developments in Turkey. Thank you for raising the question. Well, we are following closely the developments in Turkey. I mean, the continued detention of Istanbul Mayor Imamoglu is a matter of deep concern, also with other mayors, as are also arrested other mayors. It's not to compare, but in this context, I welcome the release of Congress Youth Delegate Mr. Oka Ogulari. He was, in pre-trial detention following the attention given to this case, including by our Congress. And I would set in this context as troubling precedent if participants in Council of Europe activities can be prosecuted for remarks made in that context. I mean, in all the contact that we have with all member states, particularly also with Turkish authorities, we urge for fully uphold their human rights obligations. I think it is essential that we insist on this, that the rights and freedoms should be guaranteed by the European, in the European soil, and they are also guaranteed by the European Convention on Human Rights, and it includes notably the right to a fair trial. It includes notably the freedom of assembly, the freedom of association, and they are, well, fundamental rights to have a functioning democracy. In this context, we also always recall the importance of executing the decisions of the judgments of the European Court of Human Rights. I had several occasions to address this in the recent month. I mean, one more time, it is really the role that we can have and I can have in my function to, to make sure that we have regularly those discussions addressing particularly the main points of concerns. And saying this, I also mentioned in this context exactly the execution that I mentioned before. And well, also with the very well-renowned cases that we have opened for execution at the Council of Europe. For the second question, I want to try to not to be too long. For the second question, thank you very much for this question about, I would say, the general assessment after 1 year. Well, I try to do my best in this context. Well, we try. I think we have, with the Council of Europe, one of the most possible important organizations that we need right now in Europe and in the world. Because what is disappearing right now, it is exactly this sense for the collectivity, the sense for the community, the sense for what it means forming a society. And it's exactly based on what we do. I mean, making sure, for example, that through democratic processes, it will be possible for the population to decide in which direction they want to see the country developing. How they want to see a system, civil systems organized for education, for example, for access to health, or for other things. It is exactly what is important right now if we want to continue to make society and to be a society. Exactly also with the same thing with the rule of law. I mean, to have predictability, you need to know which rules apply. That's so important, not to have arbitrary decisions in a certain moment. The rule of law is for this so important. And then for the good protection of human rights. And that's really, the protection of human rights is the protection of individual human rights. It is, I would say, in that sense, a very liberal approach of what it means to have this protection. So it was my goal to strengthen this, to work on this. But saying this, I see that we have an intensification of the war in Ukraine. Saying this, I see that we had peace fragile and still not very stable in the South Caucasus. I still see that we have tensions in the Western Balkans. I see that we have a tragedy. I mentioned this before happening in Gaza. I see that we have in some elections always a discussion about foreign interference, what it means in different directions. I mean, as we speak, the challenges are growing. And they are probably more difficult and more important than 1 year ago. I don't want to be too specific, because then we need to make constantly reforms of the organization to have an organization really fit for this really rapidly changing world. We need to address new issues. I was just mentioning right now, disinformation and foreign interferences. It is the huge threat for democratic processes. And I can tell you, as I was participating for the Council of Europe at the EPC, European Political Community in Tirana last May, I had the possibility to participate to a round table exactly on this, democratic resilience. I mean, it is our core business, I would say. Democratic resilience. And at the end of the discussion, everybody agreed, head of state and head of government, that we have a huge problem with fighting disinformation and with foreign interferences. But nobody was exactly knowing what could we do now? Because it is not possible for each country individually, independently, to tackle this issue. It is a global issue. And that's why we are thinking, after this meeting at the EPC, after the contacts with all the head of state and head of government, to think, okay, maybe we are able to deliver on this. We are able to make something to make sure that democratic processes are working well, to make sure that we have the good instruments to fight against disinformation and foreign interferences, and to understand what we mean under those words. Just to take an example. And last element, without to be complete, last element I will never forget. I think like you, the visit of President Zelensky in this hemicycle last June. That was a very truly impressive moment that we had the privilege to live together at the very center of the history of the continent and also global, because it was really a very important moment. I take now maybe the last of the further questions about environment. I mean, you are fully right. It is one of the crises that we are facing right now with the climate crisis. I mean, it is one of the important elements of this huge sequence of crises that is destabilizing our countries and our populations. That is one very important element. What can we do in this context? The first element, we have the court taking some decisions on climate cases. I know what I say because as I was candidating for the position, the European Court on Human Rights took a ruling against Switzerland exactly on one of those cases. Making history not only for Switzerland, but I mean also for other countries, and putting some lines how to address those issues at the legal and judiciary level. And I noted in the meantime that other courts did the same, more or less in the same direction. I mean, there is a movement at this level. The second element I can mention here, it is the comprehensive strategy that we have, the Council of Europe, and all the things we have with action plan on the environment. This is one really important element, and I can recall in this context that it was one of the main results of Reykjavik, the summit of head of state and head of government. It goes too often a bit forgotten. We always make reference, it is right, to the register of damage for Ukraine in Reykjavik, but there was also a really important element on democracy and very important element on environment. And we must always recall this and work on this basis with the support of the head of state and government to make the implementation, I mean, day after day of these elements. And the last point, it is the convention, possible convention, or not the convention on protection of environment to criminal law. It is exactly one element also where the Council of Europe is able to deliver.
Thank you, dear Alain. The second group of three colleagues is starting with Chrysime Grigorian.
Thank you. Here I am.
The left.
Secretary General, we note with appreciation your active engagement in the European political community, and particularly your efforts to highlight the significant geopolitical shift affecting Europe and the wider international order. You rightly stressed that also that the Council of Europe's role is essential in safeguarding human rights, democracy, and the rule of law as pillars for peace and stability. In this context, would you see further formalization of the relationship between the Council of Europe and the European political community? Thank you.
Conor Murphy is next. We cannot hear you.
You will be aware of the...
Have you inserted your badge? Press the button, wait for a few seconds.
Well done.
Thank you.
Secretary General, you will be aware of the discussion in Britain around the British government considering withdrawing from the European Convention on Human Rights. You will also be aware that the Good Friday Agreement, which brought an end to conflict in Ireland, is underpinned by the European Convention on Human Rights. What can the European Commission, the European Council of Europe do to ensure that the ongoing protection of human rights, particularly for people in the north of Ireland, in the event that the British government withdraw, and also particularly in the likelihood in coming years that the people of Ireland, both north and south, will vote to end partition and reunite our country?
Thank you. Elvira Kovacs is next.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Secretary General, when will the Council of Europe propose the modernization of the European Charter for regional or minority languages, as well as the modernization of the Framework Convention for the Protection of National Minorities? We all know that today we are living in a world of a digital world and artificial intelligence, etc. So I believe that there are many more reasons to modernize these documents because, unfortunately, they are outdated. Thank you.
Thank you, Elvira. Dear Secretary General, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Mr. President. I will start with the question about EPC and the Council of Europe. And as we all know, I mean, the EPC is a recent institution, if I can say it so, created in 2022, just after the full-scale invasion from Russia in the Ukraine. And it was, I think, the goal to have a very informal network, framework for head of state and head of governments to meet. The Council of Europe is regularly invited, and as we know, the geographical scope of the EPC is exactly the same as the geographical scope of the Council of Europe. The difference is that we have on one side a very informal gathering of head of states, head of government, and it is informal and it should remain informal. And on the other side, we have an organization with a very long standing history, anchored in all history of the continent since the post-World War II, and with a lot of elements that we developed in the meantime. The main element of the very beginning was the European Convention on Human Rights, and then the Court, and then different conventions addressing issues at the time where they appeared recently. For example, the AI Convention, the first treaty legally binding on artificial intelligence, protecting rule of law, democracy, and human rights in this context, open to the world. I mean, it is developing a lot. That means we have the same geographical scope, but different roles, I would say. And I can remember, and it was also my goal, to see what can we do to have a convergence between the two organizations. We are working on this. I know that you have a rapporteur, I think, from PACE, Scholt Nemeth, who presented also a report on this. To be honest and transparent, really transparent, it is much more difficult as I was thinking at the very beginning. Because there is, nobody is really enthusiastic supporting the EPC, seeing that the Council of Europe could come and do something there. And I think the best avenue to have some more collaboration is to work on the substance. And I can speak again about this element that I mentioned before about the possible convention fighting disinformation and foreign interference. I mean, the very start of this was discussed in the context of the EPC, but the EPC is not, it's not too critical, it's not able to deliver on this because it is not an organization with all the elements, expertise, experience to develop something concrete, a tool to make it real. And it is there where we can deliver. I mean, we can also work on this kind of collaboration. About the second element, thank you for the question about the European Convention on Human Rights and the discussion that it exists, and I'm aware about this discussion in UK about the possible withdrawal from the convention, and it means from the Council of Europe. We must be clear. I mean, there is no possibility to participate to the Council of Europe, not accepting and not committing to the European Convention on human rights. Two things on this. Maybe politically, first of all, we can remember that we had in the recent times some discussions with member states about, migration issues in the context of the convention and the court. We have this well-known letter of the 9. We have a development on this with more countries addressing the issue, and I can just recall what I said since earlier this year. I mean, it must be possible in the context of the Council of Europe to address all issues at the political level. It is important that we have the possibility transparently to speak on everything, But to politicize the court is not the right way to do this. Not only not the right way, but it is dangerous. Why? We are advocating, and I think our governments in member states are all advocating for the independence of the judiciary. We develop some projects in our action plan in countries to make sure that it is real and to improve this independence. It is not possible to do exactly the opposite at the Council of Europe. That means we should address the issue, but at the right place, and I will have probably the possibility the next EPC end of this week to address this because it will be on the table. The second element about the withdrawal, I mean, the withdrawal from the ECHR would be, to be honest, really complicated. I don't have any idea how it would be possible to make this happen. I mean, politically, legally, and I think the ECHR is part of a solution for Northern Irish peace process. It is part of the UK cooperation with the EU also. I mean, it is also an important part of the framework for how do we work together. I mean, for UK. And I mean, it would be a very, not only a bad signal, but it would be a factor of a risk of isolation, I mean, for the country. Saying this, I think it would be much better to address the issues, to discuss on everything at the right place, and to see what we can do, what do we see as the problems, and not to take the Council of Europe and the convention and the court as a scapegoat for the whole discussion that can exist in different national discussions. That seems to me really important, and we are really open to do this. Last point about UK, I had in New York a very good meeting exactly on those elements with the Lord Chancellor, Lamy. It was really interesting discussion, and it is an ongoing discussion. Here, like in all those situations, we must continue to work together and to see how we can find an alignment in interest of all actors. About minorities, thank you for your question. I mean, it's a really important topic for the Council of Europe, for all of us. The protection of persons belonging to national minorities is essential for human rights. It is essential for democratic participation, to mention this, and for social cohesion, and ultimately for peace. Because what I described before are exactly the preconditions that are necessary to have stability and peace. The word peace, we always speak here in this house from democracy, rule of law, and human rights. That's right. But why it is so important? It is so important because those elements are the ground bringing and maintaining peace. That's exactly the promise after the World War II, as I mentioned before, as we had last year the 75 years of this organization. What can we do now? In this context, I mean, one very important element that I want to mention here is the new democratic pact. And I see three key ways to make sure that this issue is duly reflected, reaffirm our standards. That's an important element. Well, if the pact explicitly refer to existing Council of Europe instruments, you know those instruments. I mean, the Framework Convention for the Protection of National Minorities, the European Charter of Regional or Minority Languages, and those are the pillars for our democratic model and must be upheld and fully implemented. Second element, rapidly promote democratic participation. Third element, support our monitoring mechanism with the advisory committee on the Framework Convention, playing a very important role in this issue. I think that's the point I see. We should also include in the whole thinking about minorities the new technological challenges. Artificial intelligence, I mean, is a key word in this context. We must take this in account. That means we must really have a comprehensive approach on this. And I think we should be also able, and it is the case, to have an interpretation, a dynamic interpretation, taking in account the new developments, speaking about minorities.
Dear Alain, we have like 3 or 4 minutes. Would you like to give the floor to 3 more colleagues? Okay, thank you so much for being so kind. I think now that it is Damien Gauthier who will ask the question.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Monsieur le Secrétaire général, vous l'avez dit, vous étiez à New York la semaine passée pour représenter notre organisation dans le cadre de la semaine de haut niveau des Nations Unies. Vous avez rencontré un grand nombre d'acteurs internationaux, de chefs d'État et de gouvernement. Au fond, dans ce monde où on a l'impression qu'on va de crise en crise et où les politiques, au lieu de résoudre les crises, régulièrement en créent, est-ce qu'on peut rester optimiste après vos discussions? Et peut-être j'y ajoute un élément d'actualité suite à l'annonce la nuit dernière de ce plan de paix pour Israël et Gaza. Est-ce que vous êtes optimiste suite à cette évolution?
So, dear colleagues, I will not going to give the floor to other colleagues because I've just been informed that the Secretary General has an appointment at 11 o'clock with the Speaker of the Parliament of Kazakhstan. So, please, dear Alain, you may respond to Damien. And then,
merci beaucoup pour la question. Je vais essayer de le faire en 2 minutes, comme ça on pourra terminer à 11 heures. Non, merci beaucoup pour cette question. Oui, c'était effectivement extrêmement intéressant à New York la semaine passée. J'avais 3 objectifs en fait. Le premier, c'était évidemment de placer aussi haut que possible le Conseil de l'Europe et notamment nos conventions ouvertes et notre rôle sur la table de toutes les discussions, notamment aussi en dehors du continent. C'est le meilleur moyen qu'on a d'avoir de la visibilité, de la crédibilité, un soutien pour l'Ukraine qui dépasse les frontières européennes, évidemment, et aussi d'avancer avec nos conventions les plus importantes. Le deuxième élément, c'était des rencontres bilatérales pour traiter de sujets spécifiques. Il y en a toute une liste. Et le troisième élément, eh bien, c'était de participer aussi à des événements plus globaux sur place. La conclusion que j'en tire, c'est qu'il y a quelques années, il y avait des critiques très faibles, non, très peu nombreuses, mais très dures contre le multilatéralisme, et tout le reste du monde défendait le multilatéralisme sans réfléchir au contenu. Aujourd'hui, on a dépassé ce stade un peu de superficialité, et il y a des discussions de fond qui commencent à se développer sur les possibles ajustements, nécessaires adaptations et sur les besoins qu'il y a aujourd'hui d'un multilatéralisme qui corresponde aux défis que nous avons pour éviter que tout s'effrite et que tout parte de travers, si vous me permettez cette expression. Donc j'ai trouvé que le débat avait gagné en maturité, si je peux le dire ainsi. J'ai trouvé ça relativement intéressant et je suis ressorti de New York un peu moins pessimiste que j'y étais entré. Voilà ce que je peux vous dire. Après, est-ce que c'est de la naïveté? Est-ce que c'est de l'optimisme? Est-ce que c'est de l'optimisme béat? À quoi avons-nous affaire? Je ne sais pas exactement, mais si je regarde sur le temps long, j'ai trouvé ça, dans le fond, assez productif et avec des acteurs qui sont maintenant concentrés sur leur travail plutôt que sur de simples déclarations. C'est quelque chose que je ressens et que j'ai trouvé l'un dans l'autre assez positif. Deuxième élément à propos du plan de paix pour Gaza, de ce qui peut se produire, il faut voir. Moi, je pense simplement que cette situation nous a entraînés à devoir observer quotidiennement quelque chose que nous n'aurions jamais imaginé possible de devoir observer un jour. Et partant de là, il va bien falloir réussir à reconstruire quelque chose. Ça m'a l'air d'être extrêmement difficile parce que je pense qu'il y a beaucoup de dégâts qui ont été faits de toutes parts avec le temps qui s'est écoulé. Mais encore une fois, si ça peut aboutir à un cessez-le-feu et à une meilleure protection, à la meilleure protection possible pour les populations civiles, c'est tout ce qu'on peut souhaiter à court terme. Les années récentes nous ont appris aussi là à ne pas être naïfs et à être relativement prudents. Si vous parlez de New York, ça me permet de rappeler également que, aussi dans les échanges que nous avons eus avec l'Assemblée, il a été question depuis un certain temps d'ouvrir un bureau du Conseil de l'Europe à New York. Je peux juste vous confirmer ici que c'est en bonne voie, que les choses avancent, que nous souhaitons que ce bureau puisse être ouvert l'année prochaine. Et c'est important parce que dans le monde multilatéral que nous voyons aujourd'hui, il y a beaucoup d'éléments où le Conseil de l'Europe, comme organisation multilatérale régionale avec un haut niveau d'engagement des membres sur les principes et les valeurs, peut apporter des solutions là où d'autres organisations sont plus empruntées pour le faire aujourd'hui. Et le principal élément que je cite dans ce cadre-là, c'est tout ce qui concerne la redevabilité et la justice dans le cadre des conflits, et bien sûr en particulier dans le cadre du conflit de la guerre en Ukraine. Et ça, le bureau doit nous permettre de porter ces éléments et ces valeurs plus haut dans le système des Nations Unies, qui en a bien besoin en réalité, qui a besoin de toutes les forces constructives qui peuvent exister, et le Conseil de l'Europe en fait partie.
And that concludes the question. Yes, Lord Twigg.
As leader of the UK delegation, following Mr. Murphy's question, can I make it clear? His Majesty's government is not considering withdrawing from the European Convention on Human Rights. It may be the opposition does, but the government in Britain is not considering it.
Thank you, Lord Twigg. Thank you, Lord Twigg. Though I believe it is a point of order to the House of Commons, not here. Yes, of course, dear Alain.
I thank you for this precision because, you know, what I understood from the question, maybe I understood wrong, what I understood that it was regarding the proposal of the opposition. It's clear for me that, what you mentioned, but I mean, your intervention allows us to make it clear. I understood your question as addressing the position of the opposition in the UK.
So it was a lively discussion, lovely and lively, and Dawn gave the tone at the end. Thank you, dear colleagues, dear Secretary General, thank you so much for being with us today and answering the questions to my colleagues.